Now, this is the story all about how my life got turned, flipped upside down. No, hang on, that's the wrong gig. Just a little bit of a warning as we get started. Part of our story, my story particularly, is talking about mental health, and I know that might be something that triggers some of you. If it is, seek some help. If it's something you struggle with, seek help. I am very fortunate that I managed to find a way that wasn't medical and didn't require therapy. It doesn't work for everybody. So please, if it's something that really rings true with you, go and see somebody. But before we actually begin the tale, can I just pray for us all? Lord God, I just thank you for this opportunity. And Lord, I just pray that in sharing our story, the focus will not be with us, but the focus will be on you. And that everyone here will be blessed a little bit by seeing, or a lot by seeing, your love at work in ordinary people. And that your name will be glorified by what we say today. In your precious name. Amen.
Okay, so we've been blessed with relatively comfortable lives. So it's actually a really good opportunity to be asked to share our testimony and really think about how God has been working in our lives. For me, when thinking about sharing, I wanted to focus on a couple of things. How we've learnt to trust God more and more and understand his sovereignty, as we've been singing about, as we've journeyed through the ups and downs of life, and the way that God weaves our lives together to achieve his plans and his purposes, and recognizing, seeing those God incidences, not coincidences, but God incidences. And for Martin, a big thing is about becoming more authentic in who we are as made in the image of God. So I'm quite visual in my thinking, so I made a picture. It's a bit small on there, but I'll do some bigger bits in a minute. It's a bit of a combination of those two ideas. Firstly, that our lives have ups and downs, and that God is with us and working through all those times. And secondly, the idea that our threads are that we are all threads in God's tapestry, in his bigger picture, that interweave with each other. Sometimes our threads are closely wound together for a long time, sometimes a short period of time, sometimes they just cross for an instant. But we form one body in Christ. And we don't see the bigger picture, but God does. We only see a tiny little bit of it, but God sees the whole thing, the whole plan. So I'm going to hand over to Martin now for his bit, and I don't know what he's going to say, so we'll see.
It's a bit of a mystery to me as well, if I'm honest. Childhood, okay, beginnings. I was born in what I always considered to be a small town, but apparently it's a very large village, according to Wikipedia. And I grew up in the 80s and 90s in a Christian family, very much at church. The kind of church where we were taught that we were better than everybody else. The kind of church where how dare you go to a different church because they don't believe the same stuff as you. And that has had impacts over my life as how I've kind of got to know other kind of walks of Christianity. I don't want to use the word cult because it wasn't that kind of closed-inness, but it was very much we're better. And that really impacted me through my teenage years. I was socially awkward. I didn't relate to people very well at all. And growing up in the 90s was really hard.
I think it's pretty hard now as well.
Yeah, but in church back then, how dare you have questions? How dare you doubt? How dare you even think about the opposite sex? As a teenager, that's really hard. That's really hard. Fortunately, most of the rest of my life was good. I was good at school. I was not sporty, but I was musical, so that kind of meant that I got away with not being bullied too much. But the school I went to, if you didn't play football, you didn't count, which I think is most private schools in the UK still. But yeah, I kind of drifted through school, played the guitar a lot, played in church a lot. As soon as I could drive, as soon as I passed my driving test, I went to a different church. I found myself at a Baptist church that some friends went to, experienced Christ in a whole new way. Within 3 weeks, was asked to play on the worship team there, really got to enter into more of this kind of what I do now, but obviously at a very much more kind of immature level. But that was huge because I got to know other young people who thought a little bit differently, had different life experiences, but not the kind of scary secular life that some of my school friends were living. And then I went to uni to study software engineering, of all crazy things, which in 1996 was not the thing to study because it was mind-numbingly dull. I lasted 3 months. I walked out, went and got a job. Ended up working at a school, at which point probably I should now just pass the story over to Eva because it was her school.
Yeah, so I grew up in England with 2 younger brothers and very loving parents. My mum's a nurse, so you don't get sympathy, but you get love. She was one of 9 siblings, and in her family, they are Christians and there are Buddhists, although she's not really convinced by either. My dad was one of 8 and grew up in a Roman Catholic family in Hong Kong. And at age 6, when we moved to a new town, we got baptized, me and my 2 brothers, and we went to the local Catholic primary school. We also went to Mass, and when we were old enough, we went without our parents, and I think mainly that was so we could go to the sweet shop on the way back. So I did learn a lot about Jesus' teaching, his parables, how to treat other people, but not really about a personal relationship with God. When I was 16 and started my A-levels, the first significant, what I would call God incidents, happened. I was put into a different tutor group, so a different group of people in school, and ended up with a whole new friendship group. And one of those friends, Lizzie, she was a Christian. She invited me to the Christian Union at school, to her youth group, in the way that our youth invite their friends here as well, and to concerts, which included jumping around as well. Worldwide Message Tribe, if anyone remembers them. Her church, to conferences, and there was numerous, I would say, altar calls during that time. And it's a bit of a blur, but it's around that time I would say I became a Christian. Another big thing that happened was that I didn't get an offer from Cambridge, from the University of Cambridge, and I found out that the chemistry lab technician at my school was retiring. I thought maybe I could work as the chemistry lab technician for a year in my school and reapply to university. And so I did that and also did Latin A-level for fun. And that year out, before going to university, turned out to be really quite important. As well as getting an offer from Cambridge, it was the year that I got to know Martin, because he was the physics lab technician. And his mum has also been my maths teacher. I started going to the church in my local town, which was a Baptist church, and it was where I was baptized in December, actually. Yeah, December 2000. My parents were supportive, as they always have been, of my choices, but they and my brothers, they still don't yet know Christ in the same life-changing way. One of the verses that was given to me at my baptism, so we had the tradition where different people in the congregation would give you a verse. I think it was by Martin's dad, and it was Proverbs 5-6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight, even if it's up and down. And this is something that we continue to learn every day. I'm going to pass back over to Martin now. Go to the next bit.
Okay, so at some point through university, before university, we were friends. We were occasionally at odds. And then, I think it was around May time, we realized that there was something maybe a little bit more than friendship going on. So we became very close. And that summer, we got engaged before university. Initially, the plan was to get married after university. We then later on made the good decision to get married after second year. made things a little bit tense and rushed during second year exams and all that kind of thing, thinking, okay, I'm sat an exam here, but in 4 weeks' time I'm going to be walking down the aisle. But no, it was really blessed time. We were really in a good church. Our small group community that we were in, which is why I think small groups is so important in church, because they were really the people who kind of bolstered us through all that time. Because obviously everybody has doubts and uncertainty, particularly leading up to major life events. But they were really supportive and encouraging of us. So we got married on the hottest day of 2002. Both our bridesmaids got sunburned during the photographs. So it was a lovely day. We had a lovely summer. Then we went and did the most challenging year, I think, of our life, which was final year of university, because I was in Salford and Eva was in Cambridge. And by third term, she wouldn't let me come down, distract her from her revision, so I didn't see her for like 5 or 6 weeks, which was hard. But God was always a part of our marriage, and we didn't have video calls and that back then, but we could still ring each other and chat on AOL Instant Messenger and all these kind of things. So we stayed in regular touch, even though we weren't physically in touch for a few weeks at a time. I'm sure many who've lived a transient lifestyle have experienced separation at some point. It's not always easy, but you get through it. And then, I've got to cover all the way to Cheddleton. Okay. We moved temporarily into. I had a house in Manchester that I'd bought very cheap as a student. We moved in there, and then we Eva got a job in a town about an hour's drive away. So we started to look to move down into that way. I was working in a electrical shop, mostly in the warehouse, throwing boxes around and stuff like that. You know, someone threw something 40 kilos at you, you would catch it and throw it back. This is very relevant to later in the tale. In fact, as you may notice, the blue line, which is my line, goes down significantly at the end of the section. Because we then moved, as I say, to this really small village. That actually isn't much smaller than where I grew up, but it felt like it, in Staffordshire, in the UK, in the hills. I got a different job as an IT technician, which meant I'd gone from burning 4,000 or 5,000 calories a day throwing boxes around to sitting at a desk burning 1,200 calories a day. The problem was that I didn't change my lifestyle, and I carried on eating 4,000 calories a day, and I put on 30 kilos in a year. My mental health, my self-respect, everything went completely through the floor. And I would say I call that period sort of 2005 to 15 my dark decade, because I could not look at myself in a mirror for 10 years. I could not wear shorts. I certainly would never go anywhere near a beach. And I was so blind to seeing my own condition that I didn't even notice any of the struggles Eva was having or any of the struggles any of my friends were having. Always, God was with me. Always, my church community was with me, supporting me in the way that they could. But until I was aware of where I was at, and until I made that decision to try and fix things with God's help and with other help, I was never going to get out of that, because you can't fix other people. You just have to pray for them. And I'm thankful that lots and lots of people prayed for me in those years.
So another important part of our life in Cheddleton, I'm not sure if you mentioned the name of the place. No. Okay, the village that we were living in, it was called Cheddleton, and another important part of that was our church, St. Andrew's. It was a Methodist church, because there was only a Methodist church and Anglican church in the village. The Methodist church had a wider range of people and ages, as well as comfier chairs. Martin does not like pews. But we were at that church for nearly 10 years, and it was a genuinely warm church family, and those are some of our closest friends that we had there. And it was a really important time of fellowship, and again in small groups and support, and also serving through music and working with young people, some who are now grown up and married, which is a bit scary. Also, around that time, 2007, I took a step out in faith when I gave up my job as a development chemist in industry. I took on a part-time maternity cover job as a youth worker with what was called Synapse Youth Work Project. It was an organisation set up by a group of local churches from different denominations. The synapse is the gap between nerve cells across which messages are passed, and the name reflected how, as a youth work project, we were working in the gaps between young and old, schools and churches, and those inside and outside of the church. The youth work itself was generally great, and I know we did have a positive impact on the lives of many young people in the town, but it was a challenging time for myself for a few reasons, and I struggled with self-confidence, particularly in terms of managing another youth worker. But there were many strong Christians around me, and managing others is mostly what I do now, so I guess it was a useful experience that God has given me, and in that time was working his purposes out. After then going into teacher training, I taught in a Catholic school. So my own experience of Catholic school was quite useful. And it was really cool to be in a place where it was normal practice to pray with students, although some students appreciated it more than others. And another significant part of that time was setting up a community theatre group called Genesis Theatre. The links in the town with the churches and with the schools was really useful. And our first production, which was Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, our Methodist minister and our very good friend Michael was Jacob, the Anglican minister was Potiphar, and the worship leader from the C of E church was Pharaoh. So it was a brilliant experience, and we had some really blessed times with that Genesis Theatre family. There were people from age 7 to 70 involved. We rehearsed in churches, and we were open about the Christian ethos of the group. So it was a way to welcome people into church spaces and build relationships with people who wouldn't otherwise have come into a church. It also, of course, gave young people an opportunity to develop their talents, and some of them are still now working in the performing arts. Then, after teaching in the UK for 4 years, we moved to an international school in Hong Kong. That's the sort of picture that's on there. Not only were we very fortunate in the roles that God provided for us in the school, but there were still even more amazing God incidences. One day, about a year after we'd been in Hong Kong, we were heading to the shopping piazza, which is across the road from the school. Walking along, and I saw someone I'd known from the Christian Union in my college at university. It was like, I know you. What are you doing here? And what she was doing there was she was visiting her friend from high school, Reba, who lived and worked at the charity Crossroads, which was next door to my school. And this was actually the first time when I heard the phrase, "There's no such thing as a coincidence, only God incidences." We started attending the same church as Reba and her husband Pablo. We stayed there for the rest of our 8 years we were in Hong Kong. We became really good friends with Reba and Pablo and got to know a lot more about the charity Crossroads. Okay, I'm going to pass back over to you.
Okay, now I think our time in Hong Kong was absolutely a blessing. I think we can certainly say that. It opened our eyes to the international world. Before I went, I think I knew people from 3 countries. By the time I left, I'd worked with people from 40. And that's what makes a community like this, and seeing all you lovely faces from different parts of the world so wonderful. But as well as that, we were very, very blessed. Financially, we had left the UK not quite in debt, but pretty much broke. I think we had like $200 to our name when we left the country. So we were very, very fortunate in our time in Hong Kong. God enabled us to pay off our house, to give a lot to the church community, to charities, and eventually to take the year out and work for Crossroads for a year. But before we got to that, is this where I'm supposed to mention I'm supposed to press the button? Yeah, there's a funny purple blob that many of us will recognize. 2020. We were in Phuket in Thailand in February for a holiday, and all of a sudden we started getting these messages. If you see any masks, buy them. Hong Kong is going down the proverbial drain. There's nothing in the shops. It's a serious thing. We'd heard about this disease in China, but it was in China. We didn't worry about it. Within a couple of months, my job at this point, I should say, because I'd changed jobs about 8 times during my time in Hong Kong, all at the school, but I was music coach, which meant my job was to work with groups of young people and prepare them for concerts. Problem during COVID? Can't work in groups. Are no concerts. What am I doing with my time? Well, one thing I did, which is why Eva's gone across to the computer, was that we had a problem, as I guess you did here, where a lot of churches started doing YouTube or Facebook live stream services, and we kept getting copyright strikes. Can't use this song. Someone else has claimed it. Now, I am not the greatest at playing any one instrument, but what God has blessed me with over the time is the ability to learn to play quite a few. And so what I ended up doing for my church, you're going to see a little bit of now, which is a song that we're going to do next week. We haven't done it very often here, but it's a beautiful song that's meant a lot to me from my teens, but certainly all the way through my struggles. God's amazing love has been there for me.
My Lord, what love is this that pays so dearly that the guilty one, may go free. Amazing love, oh what sacrifice, the Son of God given for me. My debt he pays, and my death he dies, that I might live, that I might live. And so they watched him die, despised, rejected, but oh, the blood he shed flowed for me. Amazing love, oh what sacrifice, the Son of God given for me. My debt he pays, and my death he dies, that I might live, that I might live. And now this love of Christ shall flow like rivers. Come wash your guilt away. Live again.
So God had taken away my purpose to give me another one. That's happened before. It happened again. But I talked before about how things were really low. But what God was doing through all this time, and moving to Hong Kong was certainly a big part of it, was building me back up. If you've ever been in Southeast Asia in July and August, wearing long trousers is not an option. You had to get used to yourself being yourself. People around me were positive, enjoying life, not, oh, it's just another day at the office. I was working with young people who were energetic and fun and slightly crazy occasionally, a bit like our young people here. And they were inspiring me and making me feel young again, to the point that by 38, I was younger than I was when I was 28, if that makes any sense. And certainly I feel healthier, fitter, a lot more blessed at 46 than I did at 26. Praise God. Do I need to say any more, or are you taking it over here?
I could take it and then see.
Okay.
Okay. So I was actually quite fortunate during COVID. School was well-resourced for online learning. We'd already trialled it due to the protests when school was shut in Hong Kong. There was very strict entry, tracing and quarantine rules, which were not without problems, but we never actually had a full lockdown when we were there. And I realised I quite enjoyed working from home. And when living in a boarding school, when there's no pupils there, it's really quite nice and quiet. And with the additional spare time I had, I was able to do a little bit more arts and rediscover some painting. And when I do have time to do it and post like art online, I do try to use it to share ideas about God and salvation. So in 2019, we'd already decided to move on from Hong Kong, but weren't sure where. And I can't really remember how, but it was, looking back, obviously it was God-led. But we decided to spend some time working and volunteering at Crossroads, which is what the symbol is on the picture, and then going travelling before our next job. And the generous salaries in Hong Kong did mean that we could take a year off work without worrying too much about finances. But we'd planned all this before COVID hit. And we ended up staying the whole year at Crossroads, where I was the volunteers manager and Martin was based in the electrical department. The main mission of Crossroads is connecting people in a world of need. It started when the founders, they were well known in the charity circuit, and they got a phone call about there was a massive flood in China with thousands and thousands of people displaced from their homes, lost all their belongings, etc. So the founders, they didn't know what they could do to help, really. But then they overheard a conversation of some women discussing the fact that one of them had a load of excess clothing from a factory that they owned, and they didn't know what to do with it. And so here we go, there's people who have too much, and there's people who had hardly anything. What a match. So it all grew from there. So that was its founding idea, and it is an amazing charity, and they do a load more things now, although it is currently in urgent need of a new site as the government are selling the land that they're based on. Through our experiences that year working in the charity, we often saw great examples of people who were really fully relying on God, and we saw his grace and his provision, both for the volunteers themselves and for those whom the charity were serving around the world and in Hong Kong. Oh, yeah, I didn't end that sentence very obviously. Do you want to say more about Crossroads and your experience there?
I don't know. I think the one thing that we took out of Crossroads, not the work so much, was the community that we lived in. Was that... yeah, a load of people living together, literally helping each other make the next meals. It's like if you have too much food, you give someone You take a plate across the stairwell to your neighbours or whatever like that. Anyone got any chilies? Oh, they'll have some chilies. We had a WhatsApp group. It's like, I need this for dinner. Okay, I've got some. I'll bring it up. It was just literally people living. I like to use the word tribe because I think that's something that we've lost in today's society. This whole idea of it's not just the people you're blood related to who are family. It's the people surrounding us and the people supporting us. Church community, church family is tribe. Your friendship groups are part of your tribe. Crossroads was our tribe when we were there. Everyone was in the same boat. We were all pretty broke. I mean, we were very blessed, but nobody was earning money, but God was providing, and we were giving back. And he was providing because we were giving back.
Another thing I wanted to mention in our time in Hong Kong was one of the clearest times that I remember receiving an answer to prayer. I was in China and a railway station about to miss a train. With friends from our church, I'd helped in an English camp in rural China in the middle of thousands and thousands and thousands of watermelon plants. Afterwards, I was traveling separately to meet up with Martin to do a holiday around China. And bear in mind, I do not speak Mandarin Chinese. And very few people in China actually speak English in the middle of it, in rural China. So I'd separated from the main group, taken a taxi to the train station, arrived at the huge train station, pretty new one, on my own, stressed, only a few minutes to queue to get my ticket, find the platform. I'm sure it's the sort of thing that many people have experienced. Had a reservation number and an email, had to queue up, find the right platform. I really remember clearly praying for help. And then I asked the person in front of me, did he speak English and could he help me? And he did. And he said of course he would help me, and he would take me to the right place. His train was just near mine anyway. And I got on the train with literally 1 minute before it set off. And it was just a really clear answer to prayer for me at that time. Okay, I think back over to you.
Okay. It's an aeroplane. Saw a lot of those during the first few months in Bucharest. When we knew we were leaving Hong Kong, we didn't know where we were going. Eva had applications in at 3 schools, more than 3, but 3 that we were pretty far gone on. We could have been in Lisbon, surfing on the beach. We could have been in Bratislava, apparently one of the most beautiful cities in Europe. Or there was Bucharest. Better job. Better city. We had no idea why God called us to Bucharest. Literally no idea. It turned out the day after Eva accepted the job that we found out that our neighbours directly below us were Stuart's friends from school. We didn't know that until after we accepted the job, but that was coincidence because Steve was like, oh, I know this guy. He's at a church in Bucharest. I'll get you his number and you can chat to him. We felt at home before we'd even left. I can't say life has been easy here for me. I think Eva probably had a much more gentle experience with having a solid job and all that kind of thing. Visas, everyone has their visa stories. Everybody has their visa stories. Having to spend 4 months with my parents. I moved out from home 3 weeks after my 19th birthday and had never spent more than 2 weeks with my parents since. That was a challenge. But all the while, we were growing into this community and God was building us roots here. We still didn't know why we were in Bucharest until February, until Ukraine. I've got something to do now. I can help people. Because I couldn't do anything. I can't work. I don't have a work permit. But now I can help people. I can change beds. I can get people Ubers to the airport. Purpose. Purpose had gone away. God had given me a new purpose. Once that calmed down, I played in Ukraine services. I started to get more involved here because Stuart was leaving and somebody needed to step up. And God said, you. And it is always like that. I'm always resistant to change. But God is very good at kicking me hard up the backside and say, step forward. This is for you. And I'm incredibly grateful for that. Is this where I read my verse?
It's up to you.
Okay. I think there's two verses in Psalm 139 that have really been a key part of me rediscovering who I am in Christ. Everybody knows them. For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. When I was in my hole, I couldn't accept that. I couldn't accept that I was good, that I was well made. I thought I was a mess. God keeps kicking, keeps reminding us, wake up. I made you. I made you very good. I don't know where I would be without God. In fact, I do probably, because I doubt I would still be alive at this point had I been through what I went through in my late 20s without my faith. It doesn't mean it's been sweetness and roses ever since. The last 3 years have been really tough. There have been major ups and major downs. But however low I got, I can't get to the bottom because God's there pushing me up. However dark it is, I can still see because God's lighting the way. God's amazing. We just need to let him be. Because all too often, we're pulling away from him. We're not letting him direct our paths.
So for me, despite the constant battlefield of paperwork, the past 2.5 years have been actually a great time for development in my professional life. With more responsibility, what is it? Comes great, never mind. Power, responsibility. More responsibility, of course, means more problems to solve, actually. And being in higher positions of authority, I've become even more aware and intentional about remembering that we're working for God, not for men, and the importance of bringing situations to God in prayer. Although there's still times I forget and I haven't really quite formed a real habit, a solid habit of keeping a prayer journal. I think these past few years I've been getting better at talking to God about everything, and that's partly a lot to do with the fellowship and the community here at ICB. It's been essential in continuing to build me up in my faith, and I really value the times we spend together in connect groups, retreats, youth group, although last year I think Ocean probably did get sick of seeing me almost every day of the week. I'm also currently following the Bible recap plan, which Katie recommended and Liesel's doing as well, and Holly. It covers the whole Bible in a year chronologically, and it's really helped me to read the Bible regularly and to see the Bible as one epic narrative pointing to Jesus. I thank God for his help in continuing, and that we're nearly 100 days of looking to learn something new about him every day. Yesterday, I think it was the book of Ruth. It was a really good example of God incidences, weaving together people's lives to bring about redemption. In the past couple of years here, we've seen so many examples of when God has put the right person, the right people in the right place at the right time to provide or to protect. And even if they don't know God, we are privileged to have been able to support and serve other people in their times of need. And we thank God that he blesses us in order to enable us to bless others as our threads intersect in the ups and downs of our path through life. I think that's all I have to say. So I don't know if you want to finish something.
You want me to finish off? Okay.
Yes.
So there we go. No great scandals. No near-death experiences. no addiction to talk about, no secret second lives, just God, I assume. Just two people on a journey, on their own journeys that God wove together like a tapestry. And everyone that we've come across, that God has brought into our lives, has brought new colours into that. Some people are in your life for a short period of time, but they can really enrich you in that period. Some people are in your life for years and years and years, and maybe don't make much impact until all of a sudden they do. But yeah, just really want to say that life doesn't have to be exciting always, but look for God in the small things and the big things. Because so often you look back and say, that was God. That was God. I didn't talk about my job interview, which I should have done.
Never
But, that was another God instance because it was a small one, but God was there.
Thanks for listening.
Yes, thank you for listening. I hope that's been helpful.